Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, nice. Okay, good morning, Professor Glantz. Are you here? And also good morning for Miss Teti.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, we are going to start shortly. So, yeah. So I just make sure, I want to make sure if everyone is here. Okay. Can we start, Miss Graciela, Miss Teti, Mr. Suko, and also Mr. Glantz? Can we start? Shall we start?
Yeah, I guess we can start.
Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The session will be. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The session will begin shortly. I would like to remind you to please turn off your mic so we can give our full attention to our amazing speakers. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the webinar talking about anticipatory action in Indonesia, a webinar by the Early Warning Early Action Future Leaders Network in collaboration with STMKG and IKAMEGA. We are thrilled to have you all here with us today. My name is Kadek Valerina Kitana Sanjaya, Cadet of Climate 3B, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for this event. The Director General of Indonesia Agency for Meteorology, Climatology, and Geophysics, Professor Dr. Insinyur Dwi Korita Karnawati, MSc PhD, the Honorable Professor Michael Glantz, from University of Colorado, the Honorable Miss Tati Marlina Rajakuku from IFRC Indonesia, the Honorable Principal Secretary, Insinyur Dwi Budi Sutrisno, MSc, the Honorable Deputy of Meteorology, Mr. Guswanto, the Honorable Acting Deputy of Climatology, Mr. Adasena Sopayaluakan, the Honorable Acting Deputy of Geophysics, Mr. Hanif Andi Nugraha, of Meteorology, Climatology, and Professor Dr. Suko Prayitno Adi, MSc, the Honorable Head of IKAMEGA, Dr. Afari Marajab, MSc, and all of our beloved participants of today's webinar. First and foremost, let's offer our gratitude to Almighty God for His blessings so we could all gather here in a perfect condition. Let's start our webinar with prayer. I'll welcome Cadet Dias Maulana Wireza to lead us in prayer.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mohon izin, doa akan dibacakan menurut ajaran agama Islam. Bagi yang beragama selain Islam, dimohon menyesuaikan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan yuafi ni'amahu wa yukafi'u mazidah. Ya Rabbana hamdu wa syukru kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karimi wa azimi sultani. Allahumma sholli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Ya Allah, tiada kata yang patut kami hanturkan, melainkan sanjungan tertinggi bagimu. Karena hanya atas kuasa dan izin-Mu lah, Engkau perkenankan kami hadir dalam International Scientific Online Seminar pada Dies Natalis STMKG ke-68. Berkahilah acara ini agar bisa berjalan dengan lancar. Ya Allah, berikanlah kami kesehatan, petunjuk, dan hidayah-Mu, agar kami mampu mengemban amanah dan tanggung jawab yang saat ini sedang kami jalani. Kuatkanlah kami, bimbinglah kami, tuntunlah kami, agar kami dapat melaksanakan amanah ini dengan baik. Ya Allah, ya Alim, berikan kepada kami kemampuan jiwa untuk mengemban tugas-tugas mulia dan kekuatan iman untuk menghindari cobaan. Limpahkanlah kepada kami hikmah kebijakan untuk menutupi kekurangan dan membenahi kelemahan. Curahkan kepada kami hidayah kebenaran agar terhindar dari kesesatan. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Now let's continue by singing our national anthem, Indonesia Raya, and continue with the BMKG March. For the operator, you may proceed. Thank you. Allow me to read the agenda for today. Allow me to read the agenda for today. First of all, an opening that we just passed. Second of all, a welcoming remark will be delivered by the director of STMKG. Third will be our main agenda, presentation and discussion session that will be led by the moderator. And the last is closing. Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the next agenda. A welcoming remark delivered by the director of STMKG, Associate Professor Dr. Sukapraitna Adi, MS. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Bagaimana suaranya, bisa kelihatan? Terdengar?
Siap, terdengar, Pak.
Thank you very much. The Director General BMKG, Profesor Insinyur Dwi Rita Karnawati, MSc PhD, Honorable Sekretaris Jenderal BMKG, Insinyur Dwi Sutrisno, MSc, and Honorable Deputy of Meteorology, Deputy of Climatology, Deputy in Geophysics, and Deputy Instrumentation, Calibration, Engineering, and Communication Network. The Honorable Head of IKAMEGA, and Speaker, Professor Michael Glenn from University of Colorado, and Miss Telly Marliana from IFRC, and Dr. Siswanto from BMKG. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Folk wisdom say that information is power. Therefore, sharing information is empowering, early warning message. Daily forecast information and climatology prediction are essential for mankind and all living things, living like wood, and the World Meteorology Organization, all parties of disaster, to act before disaster by implementing the anticipatory action, expertise in the meteorological and hydrological service, and as well as academia should support progress toward in this action. It is also aligned with the Indonesia RPJMN Development Agenda 2022-2024 to increase disaster resiliency in the face of climate change. Knowing the importance for implementing anticipatory action in Indonesia, STMKG as an institution in this field, collaborating with BMKG, Ikamega, and the Future Leader Network, are honored to convene a webinar talking about anticipatory action in Indonesia to celebrate the 68 Dies Natalis of STMKG. The webinar targeted not only colleagues, students in meteorology, climatology, and geophysics, but also researchers and all young professionals in BMKG. Ladies and gentlemen, the webinar is a sign of collaboration among government, IGO, NGO, community, and academia. It is our deep hope that all participants find this discussion benefit and encourage everyone to actively join the talk with the expert in this webinar. The purpose of the webinar is to introduce the anticipatory action framework in Indonesia to empower and youth regarding the early warning, early action for climate and weather, and to inspire individual and BMKG to be innovative and critical and initiating reliable, effective early warning practices. My graduate to Professor Michael Glenn from University of Colorado, Mrs. Teti Marlina from IFRC, and Dr. Siswanto from BMKG for joining us and enriching with the knowledge they have. And also, all committee from BMKG, STMKG, Ikamega, and Future Leader from the hard work they put to make this event possible. Finally, as STMKG Dies Natalis, theme this year, celebration of multicultural and exchange tradition. We believe this webinar will be the best platform to exchange knowledge across generations and to share experience as well as to identify the gap and the opportunity the contributing for anticipatory and action in Indonesia. I think that's all from me. I wish everyone to have a meaningful discussion. Thank you very much for your attention. Good morning and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Sukul Prayitno Adi, MSE, for the insightful speech. Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue this webinar today, let's activate our camera and put on our best smiles because we will having a documentation session. Now I will count to 3 and the operator may take the screenshot. For slide 1, 1, 2, 3. Slide 2, 1, 2, 3. Slide 3, 1, 2, 3. Slide 4. 1, 2, 3. 5. 1, 2, 3. Slide 6. 1, 2, 3. Slide 7. 1, 2, 3. Slide 8. 1, 2, 3. Slide 9. 1, 2, 3. Slide 10. 1, 2, 3. Slide 11. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you. Now, without any further ado, I would like to invite our moderator, Ms. Graziela Ola. Ms. Graziela Ola has been working as a weather forecaster in Biak Meteorological Station since 2010 and has been actively joined several conferences, national and international. She is appointed as one of the co-chairs for Future Leaders Network, Early Warning, Early Action.
Hi, hello, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Miss.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Valerina, for leading us for the opening session. Good morning. How is everyone doing? Feel free to introduce yourself, give comments, and or later question on the chat box that we will discuss right after the presentation. Well, before we begin the talk, I want to show a quick survey that we made. I hope you remember that you answer about, do you know, a simple question related to the topic, do you know about anticipatory action? And this is the survey. Okay, I want to show you. So from almost, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can, Miss.
Okay. Yeah, you can see. I give a simple question. Do you know anticipatory action? And this is the responder. 91 responders, and almost half of it said that heard it a couple of times, but still clueless. And 20% something don't know it at all. Only 7%. I noticed only 7% of the participants that know what is anticipatory action and actually involved in it. So I'm glad that we did this webinar so we can learn more and ask a deeper question related to anticipatory action. Okay, talk. I will introduce my speakers today and a panelist. We have two speakers and a panelist. The first presentation will be given by Professor Glantz, and the second presenter will be presented by Ms. Teti Marlina. And the last but not least, the very familiar face, Dr. Siswanto. So basically, both of our speakers will deliver the presentation. Professor will be talking about early warning, early action in weather and climate, and Ms. Teti will talking about what is exactly this anticipatory action. And then Dr. Siswanto will respond and share his perspective from BMKG. And after that, we'll start open the question and answer session. Okay, without any further ado, we are going to the first speaker of the day. But let me introduce first who is Professor Michael Glantz, or we usually call Mikey, Professor Mikey. Good evening in Colorado time, Professor. It is nice to have you, to see you again. Thank you for joining with us. Before I would like to introduce Professor. Professor is a researcher, also a director of Consortium for Capacity Building at the University of Colorado. This is a program, an innovative program focusing on ungraduated educator, young professional, and students. He was a senior scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR, and was the only senior scientist from social science in NCAR in 60 years history. His research relates to African drought and desertification, such as societal impact of climate anomalies related to El Nino, La Nina events. And Professor also a writer. The newest book title is El Nino Ready Nation and Disaster Risk Reduction. Hi, Professor. I would love to read all of your achievement, but I'm afraid it will take forever. So I give the floor to you. Hi, Professor. It's your time to present. Oh, I think.
There. Okay. Hi. Okay. I'm going to try to share the screen. So I've not done this one before. So share. Open system preference. I don't know what that means. Can you see anything?
Not yet.
So I'm clicking on share screen and it says desktop. I don't know what's happening. Slides, portion of screen, share. Is it working? I don't know what's going on here.
No, it's not.
I'm pushing the share the screen, correct?
Yeah.
And then it comes up with basic or advanced. I don't know what any of that means. File. Oh, I see. Okay. Hold on. Dropbox. Open system. Okay, there's open system. I don't know what I'm doing here, honestly. Open system preferences. I see my stuff and I can't share it. Otherwise, I'll just have to talk it if I can't share it.
Yeah, or you can send to me and I can share.
Okay, can we do that? So let me send you an email. Okay. This is not right. Okay, reply. Graciela, it's right here. It's coming. It's okay. I just sent it. Did you get it yet? I'll talk faster when I'll
Got it.
Did you get it?
Yeah. Okay, I download it and I will share.
Okay, so I will just say, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'll probably wind up reading it because it will slow me down. Otherwise, I talk too fast. Okay. When will I know it's open?
Yeah, it's open now. Wait. Please wait. Okay, there you go.
Okay, you can see it. Ah, there it is. Okay, so do I have control over which slide comes up?
You can say next and I will move to the next slide.
Okay. So what I wanted to say that is, and I can't see my slides until I tell you, but this is a set of thoughts because I've been doing early warning systems and action and all that for decades. And I had a lot of trouble picking out what I felt was most important for the students, actually, for the young people. So what you see will be a collection of thoughts, okay? It's not one story, which is what I usually do. So next slide. Yeah, that one. All right, now these are just 2 points I want you to remember. One is that youth makes up a large portion of the world's population, okay? Because one of my topics I'm going to mention later is this intergenerational interactions between the young guys like me, the old guys like me, and the young people, okay? And we're very different. We have similar interests, but we're different. And I wanted to point this out because if you go to 30 or 35 or 40, a large portion of the world is young, okay? And but a small portion of the world runs the world, the different generations, okay? And one of our goals is to bring the generations together, interactive, because of, you'll see why, okay? So that's the first thing. And as it says, youth make up about 50% of the world's population, yet individually or collectively, they have no major voice, no major stream of funding, and no seat in the United Nations. Just like indigenous people around the globe, the same situation, no voice. However, the voice of the young are growing, and every UN agency, sister agency, now has a program for youth, okay, that involves youth. So 2020 is the new 2050. I've been saying this for about a decade. When we were speculating about the horrible hydrometeorological extremes and anomalies that might affect us in 2050, all the speculation, what will climate change do to the world? It's doing it now. It's doing it now. And we're seeing it this year alone. Several places have had extremely deadly floods or fires, not just developing countries or emerging economies, but the rich countries as well. As you know, we had major fires in Hawaii that destroyed an entire city. Okay, and it involves early warning because they had an early warning system, but it wasn't turned on when the fires came. So there are a lot of things about early warning systems I want to talk about, but I can't because there's not enough time. I'd love to do this again, just focusing on them. And my next argument is 2050 could be the new 2100. But, you know, we'll have more droughts, more floods, more of that. But that's really important, that 2150, because 2050, because of sea level rise. If sea level rises at an accelerating rate, coastal areas are in deep trouble. Especially now I'm working on river deltas, ocean-facing river deltas. And if you just take the 50 to 100 top big river deltas, they contain 500 million people. Just deltas, not the coastlines, just the delta areas. Next slide, please. You have to stop me because I'll talk. I love to talk about this stuff. So, and these are slides I've made. So look at the slides. I spend as much time picking the pictures as I do of the talk. So this is a little bit of history that will be said in the next talk. But I'm an outsider to the Red Cross or the IFRC. So, and, you know, associated with them, but I'm not of them. So this is my study. And it says early warning, early action. EWEA emerged a decade and a half ago, around 2006, 2009, in that period, as an interesting concept by IFRC, the Red Cross, Red Crescent societies. It was meant to accelerate preparatory, now it's called anticipatory, but early it was get ready, preparation, actions for humanitarian responses to forecasts of foreseeable, not probabilistic, but foreseeable, which is a term people on the street would understand, even though most Americans don't even understand probabilities, okay, for these hydromet hazards and mudslides, related hazards, to assist at-risk populations before the impacts of a hydromet hazard to reduce the disaster that might follow. And in 2016, the FAO, the UN FAO, also began to operationalize hazard-related responses to food insecurity. They created, actually, an EWEA system. They call it a systems group. So they embrace it. They're the only group that embraces EWEA as a system. Others just talk about it as a program or an activity. FAO emphasized the equal importance, and this is important because I'm a social scientist who's worked for 50 or 60 years, I don't even know how many, with meteorologists and climatologists at my National Center for Atmospheric Research, that the early warning and early action have got to be treated the same. There's got to be equity between them, because if you don't have early action to a forecast, you don't need the forecast. So it's always been the case that early warning and early action were linked together. But universities keep them separate. Life keeps them separate. So you have scientists on one side in their silo, and you have society and the social sciences in another silo. They can see each other because the silo is made of glass. And some reach across to each other, but it's difficult because institutions have trouble rewarding multidisciplinary work. The next slide, please. The next. Okay, back to basics. Now, there's a bit of a story here. The EWEA for all, okay? That is what I would have called EW for all, early warning for all. And I'll tell you, you'll see why in a minute. The EWEA acronym as a brand, kind of like Apple or Nike or some other product, people could relate to it. And when they hear EWEA, it's like the tip of a mountain because they know what's below it, or the tip of an iceberg. They know when you say EWEA, it relates to early warning, it relates to disasters or hazards or hazard avoidance or something like that, okay? So that was what I said about it starting. And now other groups have started, like FAO has an EWEA system. REAP is another risk response using early warning in its title. And then there's the Early Warning, Early Action Future Leaders Network, among others. So there are a lot of groups since 2007, but really the FAO was the next. And then now there are various groups using that acronym EWEA. An obvious change to the initiative's name, because EWEA was the initiative that was developed over the last couple of years. They worked on it. So there were EWEA meetings everywhere. And what happened was they changed the name to EW4A to make it more like the UN, for all countries, all peoples. Okay? So it says, hold on, I've got to read it. So the EW represents the producer side of hydromet warnings, the technical side, whereas EA represents the societal side as recipients of the forecast, and then they act on it, the emergency managers, first responders. So a bottom line concern about the name change to me was that early action must be explicitly stated, but it was removed, okay? Because an EW4A, the early warning is in the service of society. So it must have early action explicitly stated. So that's one of my concerns. Okay, so let me just see here. So what I argue is that the two concepts that have been put together and to create EWEA for all, it serves as an umbrella for regional EWEA centers. So Indonesia could be the regional center for EWEA center for Southeast Asia, something like that. Or Egypt proposed it to the WMO to be the regional EWEA center for Northern Africa. Okay, so you didn't have to replace one acronym with another. You could have put them together to be more inclusive. That's my thing anyway. So, okay, and everyone would have won. Nobody would have lost. Next. Next slide. Okay, so 3 weeks before the UN conference in Egypt for climate change, the UN COP27, we held a workshop. This is the title of the workshop, and this is why I mentioned at the beginning, youth and young professionals, early career people. It was an intergenerational think shop. No papers were presented, all discussion. And we brought these people, these young people there for hydromet, early warning, early action, and how to engage young professionals in disaster risk reduction. Okay, and you'll see these various reports. Okay, they're from different organizations. So early warning, early action before the COP27 and the change of the name, people were used to early EWEA, this, that, and the other, and now it's EW4A. Okay, but they say that the early action is implied. It's not explicit. It should be explicit. Okay, so this is some of the information. Next, there is a report of this, which we can make available to everybody. So what I wanted to say, what's going on is the climate change, with climate change, the climate change future that we envisioned is arriving earlier than expected. And the point is that the rates of change are often as important as the change itself. So if it's a slow moving increase of drought or less precipitation per decade, society adjusts. But you can't adjust when you get a half a year of rainfall in 24 hours, as just happened in Libya. They got half of their rain in one day, and it killed over 5,000 to 10,000 people. They have no idea. This is the event that just happened. So it also applies for coping with climate change and coping with the changes in anomalies, with changes in drought, with changes in flood, the timing, the intensity, the size of these events. This is a statement by actually a writer in America from the 1930s. And he said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you sit there. So the point is, our bureaucracies are moving slower than the climate is changing. And this is a major problem. And it's why early warnings are more important now, and anticipatory action is more important now than it's ever been. Next slide. Let me know if I'm going too long. I don't have a watch that says, okay?
I will watch.
Okay, warn me. Okay. Early warning systems. Now, this is my other point. I say that they're more important, not only than ever, but they're more important than most people think. And I'm going to show you why. Next. Hit something. Okay. If you look at A, okay, that's how people look at early warning systems. It is a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, by the A, it's like a searchlight. And it goes around society. around the base of this pyramid, and it says, oh, there's a problem. Early warning sees a problem, fix it. And they go and they fix it. Early warning sees a problem, go fix it. They tell someone, okay, that's our view of society. It's stable, and early warning systems warn us about things around the edge. However, the reality is early warning systems are in unstable equilibrium. That society, the progress, the success of society rests on early warning systems. If they're not good, societies can collapse, and they have collapsed in a military sense, in an economic sense. Companies do this. They have to have warnings. Everyone wants a warning system. Okay, what you do with the information you get is something else. But I argue that the true value of early warning systems is that they hold society in some sort of equilibrium. Okay, droughts, floods, food prices because of drought increases, all kinds of instabilities can arise from hydromet anomalies. Next slide. All right, so you can take apart early warning system. You can say, how early is early? Okay, I can tell you, if you look at this chart in the middle of climate change, this chart was made, I can't remember, almost 20 years ago. And what's happened is 2020, the Earth, okay, it's getting warmer since 1870 or earlier, actually. By 2020, you see as starting to warm a bit more extreme weather. But what's happened is, if you look at 2050, that's what's going on now. The red at the top of the pole shows that the ice is melting. The Arctic is melting. It also means the glaciers around the globe are melting. 96%, they say, of the glaciers are melting, okay? Inland lakes are drying up, not just in the United States, the Great Salt Lake, but in China and in other countries, the lakes are shrinking. So global warming is real. Whether people don't believe it or not is another thing. Another thing is, you know, EWEA suggests that action comes after a warning, okay? And that's true for seasonal forecasts, sub-seasonal forecasts. That's true, that you take an action when they tell you it might be a flood, okay? That's being ready. But you have warnings that are not coming from Met Service. They're coming from history. Does your region have a history of drought? Does it have a history of floods? So even a peasant, the poorest, uneducated person knows, if they've lived, the families have lived in a particular region, they know some of the hazards in their region. As you know, so they're used to this. They don't need to hear, they see different signs in nature and they take action. So that's why this writer once said that history is a vast early warning system. And there's a phrase, if you don't learn history, you're going to repeat it. So if you don't build a seawall where it floods all the time, it's going to always flood, and it's going to get worse because the sea level is rising and that kind of thing. So you can say how early is early, and different hydromet events have different time frames where you need to know. Lightning, very fast. Fires, days. Hurricanes, weeks. You see, so everything's got its.
Để cho người trẻ người ta biết thế mà. Đã.
What's that?
Xong thì chưa xong, nhưng mà nốt thì vẫn nốt được. Bác cứ nói đi. Cái cô tí bác họp với Hàn Quốc hả?
Operator, can you see who is unmute?
I don't know who's that. Who's that?
Yeah, sorry. Operator, please.
Oh, someone's got their mic open. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Next
Sorry.
slide.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's no problem. I'm just want to. All right. So here's an early warning system. And I did this one because the scientists, meteorologists, et cetera, they like to use probability. You know, they use it in Australia, they use all this, but many people do not understand probability. And as the early warning people begin to interact more frequently with the early action people, there is a connection with terminology. Okay, so what I've done is I've come up, if you could hit as if it's the next slide, something will come up. Yeah, so I've added foreseeability. Now, foreseeability is an interesting term. It really comes from law. It's not from social science. It's not from science, but it's very useful because with forecasts, you hardly ever have a perfect forecast. Okay, but people understand if you say, it looks like rain, you know, they kind of give a number in their mind. But if you say the probability is 60%, they don't know what to do with it. Most people, okay? In America, I don't know about Indonesia, but in America, it's that way. So if you go to the next slide, okay, here's how, this is foreseeability. So I wanted to expose this term. I assume it exists in Indonesian language, I don't know. But it's to see beforehand, to foreknow, to determine in law responsibility for damage. And what it includes, like you could say foreseeable risk. If I build my house on the edge of the ocean, it's foreseeable it could get flooded. It's foreseeable, possible, you know. I don't know what that probability is, but I know it could happen. But here in the law, if you look at the fourth thing, it says foreseeability encompasses not only that which the defendant foresaw or could foresee, but that which the defendant should have foreseen. Okay? A smart person would say, if you build on the coast and you get flooded, it's your fault. You should have known that. Things like that. So if you go driving a car and there's a stop sign and you go through it, it's your fault because the stop sign, you should have known there was danger and a risk. Okay? So I'm trying to get foreseeability used when talking to the social side. Okay? Anyway, I'm just trying to look at the connections. Next slide. I think I'm going too long here.
Sorry, Professor, you have 5 more minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, thanks. So here are examples of foreseeability. Increasing superstorms. Here's super cyclone Orissa. Tens of thousands died in that. All of these are headlines from newspapers. Okay, the web. Super intense hurricane, superstorm, March, superstorm, hypercell. Okay, mega cyclone Orissa. Okay, so what could be worse than a superstorm? Anybody want to tell me? Want to guess? A season of superstorms. Not just one strong hurricane for the US, but 3 or 5 strong hurricanes. So in other words, there's a lot of room for these hydromet threats in a warming climate because we don't know how El Nino will respond to global warming, how we have ideas and speculation, but we don't know what it is. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the answer. I gave you the answer. So you can deconstruct, like you can deconstruct early warning system into what is early, what is a warning, what is a system. An early warning system the warning goes to people, but are responses of people part of that system? The emergency managers, what does society do? Once I give my forecast, it used to be, this is why anticipatory action is changed the whole story. Because before I give you in society my forecast, now you go, it's your problem. No, now the problem is being shared because you can tell me it's going to flood, but what's your best guess as what that means? An intense flood, not so intense, long lasting, and things like that. So on the one end, you see these different types of events, hydrometeorological events involving all kinds of predictions from hours and minutes up to decades and even centuries, as we're doing with climate change. The elements of early warning, early action, that you can deconstruct this. You take it apart. And so here you have these 4 elements of early warning: the risk, knowledge, monitoring, responses, and dissemination and communication. My question is, they all are like in their own box. Is someone overseeing all of them to make sure that there is integration? Okay. All right. Next slide. I'll go faster. Okay. This is the one, right? Okay. So if you read the literature, like the 2010, 2015, like I read 15 years or 12 years of these reports here, and of annual reports of a humanitarian aid agency. It was boring, very boring. But when I was reading it from one year to the next, the words they used started to repeat themselves. Okay. And I thought, well, maybe, and they all began with R. These are the R words of disaster to me. Okay. No one's put this together as far as I know. But if you look at the words, reduce, risk, request, respond, relief, restore, rethink, you see, reposition, refunction, etc., responders. Most of these words, I mean, I had the idea that you could put a P in front of the word, like instead of reposition after the event, preposition before the event. Add a P, letter P. Refunction, change what you're doing. Oh, we're doing it wrong. Pre-function. Think about it before the hazard, and all that. Prehabilitate, pre-construction. Anyway, that's just a weird thought I wanted to share. So the early warning, early action concept and anticipatory, it's made anticipatory action more important. We've got to change the words that are in these disaster reports, that we did something right. We did move people. We did save them. Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, Professor. The time
Let's see
is
the next
up.
slide. Wait, now I'll do fast. This one's fast. Okay. Okay. So there are old people and there are young people in this business. Now, I did this and you can have it to look at. Okay, so that's why I have more words than I usually do. Okay, but look, this is what older workers can teach younger workers. This is that intergeneration. We have loyalty. We want to work in an office from 9 to 5. Young people don't. They want to work when they want to work. They have different life goals. But we can learn from them about new technology, about job hunting, why they go to different jobs and things like that. So I think there are reasons to work together. Next slide. This will be fast. Okay, idea sharing. Youth and young professionals are sharing information and insights in ways that previous generation have not, do not, will not engage with the same level of intensity and improvisation as they do today. Okay, this is new. So the big question is not whether kids can learn, can adults learn? The kids are learning all the time, but it's the adults who have their ways, you know, and don't change them. Next, this I think is the last one. Yes, so this T-shirt was on a youth at one of the COP meetings in Mexico. And it says to the policymakers, you've been negotiating all my life. You cannot tell me you need more time to solve climate change, okay? And I think, I don't know if there's one more. Can you see if there's one more? I think that's it. Yeah, I'm sorry I took so long. Okay.
Okay. Okay. No, it's okay. We love to hear you, but we have to move to the next session.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Miss
I'm
Teti,
sorry.
yeah, that's okay. Miss Teti already waiting for us. Without any further ado, I will invite Miss Teti, and yeah, short bio of Miss Teti. She has been working for IFRC from 2020, and now she is a senior disaster risk management officer. Graduate from the Lund University for disaster risk management and climate change. For Miss Teti, the time is yours.
Belum masuk kali Mbak Gracia. Mbak Tetinya belum masuk ini.
Izin Pak, ada, sudah ada.
Ada ya? Oke.
Ya.
Terima kasih.
Ella, can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Please.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Teti Marlina. I'm currently the disaster risk management specialist at the IFRC here in Jakarta. Our office is in charge for the Indonesian Red Cross, supporting the Indonesian Red Cross, the Timor-Leste Red Cross, and Brunei Darussalam Red Crescent. And thank you so much for the invitation and for us to be able to talk about anticipatory action in Indonesia. Before we begin, I would like to apologize because I think for this session, the correct speaker would be the Indonesian Red Cross, because this is what they have been doing for the past 4 years. So, but none of them are available, and I hope I can help shed some light in their place. Maybe I will straight to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, yeah. I was asked by the moderator to talk, to introduce a little bit on what anticipatory action is, the definition, what it is exactly, and how it is different from other phases in disaster risk management cycle. Professor Michael was right, but the anticipatory actions transition a lot. There was a lot of changing terminologies. It used to be known as early warning, early action, and in the Red Cross movement, we know it as forecast-based financing, forecast-based action, and so recently it is formalized as the anticipatory action. So, what is anticipatory action? The IFRC in their 2020 definition refers to AA as actions taken to reduce the impact of a forecast hazard before it occurs or before the most acute impacts are felt. And UNDRR, within one of their publications, define AA as a proactive approach to address the potential impact of a forecast hazard that aims to reduce the burden on humanitarian response efforts, enhance community resilience, provide more predictable resources compared to traditional humanitarian funding approach. So based on this definition, there are words in that I bold, such as actions taken before the disaster occurs. It is a proactive approach. There is that it is based on forecast, early warning, and there is predictable resources to sort of funding these actions. And across the world right now, a lot of organizations are working in to implement the early actions and promoting the anticipatory actions, such as the Red Cross movement, FAO, WFP, and I believe there are more other local NGOs in Indonesia getting more and more interested, and our government agencies are also more engaged currently right now in sort of pushing the agenda for anticipatory actions in nationally, including in our long-term national planning agenda. So yeah, this is the definition, and well, why Professor Michael said that there is a changing climate basically, and one way or another we have to adapt to this changing climate. And what AA is trying to do is to leverage the technology of our technology in forecasting, because we have improved forecasting capability. And with this, we want to sort of make use of the lead time, this window of opportunity between the early warning and before the disaster really blown. So and of course, as humanitarians here, our main objective is to save lives and the livelihood of the people, meaning that the earlier we act, it is assumed that we will mitigate the impact of the disaster, and that would in a way consequently reduce the emergency response cost. And of course, so yeah, so there is a lot of questions for us when we recently in 2020-21 there are a lot of questions from the government agency, from other humanitarian actors. What makes anticipatory action different? How is it different from, for example, preparedness measures? And here in Indonesia, we also have a term for siaga darurat. So if we refer to the definitions, these are the the pillars of anticipatory actions, and we always refer to this pillar when we try to distinguish between AA and other kind of preparedness or siaga darurat and emergency response, because a lot of people are still confused whether AA is actually an emergency response. So yeah, the first pillars is early warning. We'll talk about what is trigger and threshold. The second pillar is early actions, and the third pillar is financing. So early warning. I don't think I would need to talk about early warning specifically to all of you, because I'm pretty sure that you have more expertise than I do here. But what I want to emphasize in anticipatory action is how the early warning, the forecast, is used to sort of provide more information on the trigger and threshold. So there are set up specific conditions or situations, we call it triggers, that have to be agreed upon in advance based on the forecasted impact of events. So, and it is usually set up very, very specific and very measurable. So for example, here we have the trigger would be, okay, we will activate our early actions when there is a early warning from the BMKG that the rainfall level would be would hit 80 millimeters per day. Or for daerah aliran sungai, we have river water level and we have temperature. So this setting up the trigger and threshold, it's a very inherent part of the anticipatory actions. It is systematically linked, and it is also sort of the base for the activation of early action. Early warning, the first pillar, is a very scientific part of the anticipatory action. It is the very science-based, and for us humanitarians, we're just trying to sort of make use of our forecasting capability, working with the Met Office, for example, and BNPB. So this is the first pillar. For us in the Indonesian Red Cross, we have conducted studies in 4 watersheds in Indonesia, and our trigger and threshold is for rainfall more than 100 millimeters per day within 24 hours, with an observed probability of 80%. So it is very specific, and when it is reached and when it is met, only when it is met that we can activate the early action. We can do early actions. So early warning is very contextualized based on the hazard. Flood, for example, have shorter lead time. Cyclone, I think shorter lead time. Drought is more because it's slow, that they have a longer lead time, window of opportunity. So it is can be very different from one hazard to another. And the second pillar are early actions. So early actions are actions taken in response to triggers. So these are pre-agreed, sort of coordinated early actions. This is something that we agreed with the community, with the stakeholders, with PMI, on what do we do when the triggers are reached? What do we do when the forecast says that, oh, we're going to have 80 millimeters per day within the next 2 days? So these pre-agreed, pre-planned actions are outlined and formalized in a document. For in the Red Cross, we called it early action protocol, but I know other organizations might have a different term, or the action AA protocol, or AA SOP and such. So, but it has to be outlined and it has to be agreed by all the stakeholders and formalized, because it is the basis for the mechanism for the activations. So, for example, of some example of early actions: evacuation, distribution of cash, stockpiling food supplies, mobilizing medical teams, providing clean water ahead of time, moving livestock to higher ground for example, in agriculture area. Securing valuable documents, but valuable belongings, and such and such. Maybe just a little bit information. I think about a few months ago, we conducted this sort of focus group discussion in Bogor. We kind of want to assess how early they act, you know. So we had this little gathering with the community in Bogor, and they said that, we are very used to flooding here. We'll only evacuate when the water, so it's already flooding, but only when the water is reached a certain height of the tree. Yeah, so it's not based on the forecast, it's not based on the river water level, but it's based on what they're used to. But of course, this is something that the community are used to, and the anticipatory action wants to bring that together, this kind of habit and culture into a more coordinated way, and a more plan in a way, and can be used massively. So it's not only individualistic. So this household might evacuate, but the other household decided to stay because, for example, they have all of their belongings in their house. So that's part of the early actions. There are a set of actions that are coordinated and agreed upon with the community and the stakeholders. And the third pillar is financing. Financing refers to an automatic release of funding when trigger is reached. So for the Red Cross movement, our main funding for the AA at the moment, as we are piloting the AA, we have a pot from Geneva called Disaster Relief Emergency Fund, which can be used for this. But I know there are other sources, other organizations are using their own financial because they're also piloting the AA. And at the national level in Indonesia, we're currently working together with Kemenko PMK and Kemendes, Kemensos to sort of see if the village fund can be accessed to finance the anticipatory action. So those are the three pillars of anticipatory actions. This is just a little an illustration of what it looks like in the usual emergency response. And on the bottom, we have the proactive approach, which is by anticipatory action. So you can see here in normal circumstances, normal situations, we conducted the usual preparedness measure, but then most of the time there is a lack of monitoring, there's a lack of preparedness, and then when the disaster strike, we go straight into emergency response, and then after that, recovery. But with anticipatory actions, in normal circumstances, we do a lot of preparedness work, but during this time span between preparedness and emergency response, we monitor the forecast very, very closely. The BMKG release seasonal forecast, and when we enter the rainy season, for example, we monitor the monthly forecast, the weekly forecast, the daily forecast, and such and such. So this monitoring of forecast information is important because we have to assess when the trigger is near and when it will be reached. Because once it's reached, then we will activate the early action. So these all are based on early warning information released by the Met Office. The early warnings before it really the disaster really strikes, there is a lead time. So we refer lead time as this window of opportunity from the early warning on the trigger and the response. So of course, the longer the lead time, the more time we have to prepare ourselves, but the shorter, then it will be more difficult. So we have to make a lot of discussion with the community and stakeholders. Now, in this anticipatory actions, of course, in the preparedness, we as the Red Cross and other organizations, we also have to strengthen our capacity in order to capacitate, to increase our organizational capacity in implementing the early actions, because this is something new. and it requires a lot of adjustment in the way we work, in the way we think, and so yeah, a lot of preparedness, capacity building, capacity strengthening, whether it is for community or whether it is for PMI and the stakeholders, are happening at the preparedness level. For example, for community, we have this tabletop exercise, we have simulations of early action. What do we do when it really reach the trigger is reached? Do they know, how do they know that what to do and how? And of course, capacity building for the Indonesian Red Cross and other organizations. So when disaster response, when we move to disaster response, when the flooding is really happen, this is where the early action stops and it moves to an official emergency response. Of course, there's a lot of more technical information along with this, but this is just a simplified version of the AA that we are currently building with the Red Cross. So the Indonesian Red Cross, with the support of the IFRC and other donors, have actually started the AA. It was known as a forecast-based action before. We started in 2019 with a lot of socialization, dissemination of what AA is, because people were not very familiar with the AA. There is this sort of mindset that AA is just emergency response that we do earlier and such. So a lot of capacity building internally, a lot of socialization, but also in 2019, 2020, we conducted, initiated collaborations with government stakeholders. We work together with the Met Office, BMKG, BNPB, but in 2020 and 2021, because when the pandemic hit, it was really hard to move forward with the AA. As we know, BNPB was appointed by the president to lead the COVID-19 operations. So coordination was really difficult, but we moved very, very slowly. So I think we only progressed quite rapidly 2-3 months before 2021 ended, and then we moved from 2021 and to here, and within that short time span, we have achieved some milestones, some very important progress for AA in Indonesia. So this is just some of the achievements that I relate back to the pillars of anticipatory action. So in early warning, to set up, as I mentioned, because we need to set up the triggers and the threshold. The Indonesian Red Cross conducted watershed studies, collaborated with the research institutions, and this based on these studies, we decided that the AA of the Indonesian the Red Cross movement in Indonesia only cover rainfall with a return period of 5 years. So not an annual flooding, but only when it hits, when it shows a potential of a 5-year return period. And based on this research, also our trigger is when the rainfall achieves 100 millimeters within 24 hours, with an observed probability of 80%, and all of this information can be accessed and monitored through the BMKG website platform. So here, so technically we have two two triggers and threshold, two very specific conditions that needs to be reached in order for us to activate the early action. So in addition to that, we work together with the BMKG, where they provide the multi-hazard early warning system platform for PMI to use. We also conducted a mosaic training with the BMKG. And what we're currently doing is to develop the end-to-end monitoring of forecasts. By that, capacitating our post-command, our personnel, developing the standard operating procedures, and and other work. In early actions, so we have set up a lot of, I think about a year ago, we have conducted a lot of focus group discussion with the community, with the PMI branches and PM, and of course the government stakeholders. And these information of early actions have been formalized in a national early action protocol. It is still ongoing because it needs to be validated at the UNIVA level, and at the ground level, we have translated this early action protocol into something simpler. It's called early action SOP for the community, and we try to synergize the early action document with at the district level, at the city level, with the contingency plan. And financing, as I said, in order to be able to have access to the financing, the early action protocol has to be validated, and this is still on progress. But at the same time, the Indonesian Red Cross, through the anticipatory action working group nationally, are pushing for a greater synergy of AA in our disaster risk management framework. And by that, we also try to see if there is sustainable financing for anticipatory action. We work together with Kemensos, Kemendes. One of the most possible source of funding is, of course, Village Fund. So this is still on progress, and there are a lot of more work to be done with other NGOs. And this is only a simple work developed by the Indonesian Red Cross. And yeah, we're hopefully in the future we can help. We can build this more culture of preparedness with anticipatory action, proactive transition paradigm in our disaster risk management from the emergency response to anticipatory action. So I think that is the last part of my slide. Thank you very much. So yeah, I will stop here.
Thank you, Ms. Teti. Very insightful presentation. I hope everyone could join us with the discussion later. But before we begin our Q&A session, I would like to invite the one and only Dr. Siswanto. Let's hear the perspective from the roles of BMKG and then the roles of the weather forecaster especially, and we all know that Dr. Siswanto is currently really actively raising the awareness about climate-related risk. So yeah, I will invite Dr. Siswanto to join us. Let me introduce first. Dr. Siswanto is a researcher in climate and air quality information, got his Master Science from Bern University, and recently finished his PhD from Urban Climate Extreme Institution and from Environmental Science, Freya University. And I think that's all. Dr. Siswanto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Ella. Hello, good morning. Hello, good evening there, Prof. Glenn, and also Mbak Teti here. Good morning, and all participants. First of all, I would like to congratulate to Pak Suko, Pak Dr. Suko, for the Dies Natalis, the 78th of STMKG Dies Natalis. I hope that STMKG will be become a great campus, and also taking a very great contribution in our country to reshaping and also particularly in the early warning and to provide the best human resources for meteorologists, climatologists, and also geophysicists. Thank you, Baila. I would like to share my slide. I note some notes from what the lecturer has been given by Professor Michael Glenn, and also I was also taking some notes from Mbak Teti. So allow me to share the screen. Okay, so I hope that I don't miss a lot from the presentation that has been given by the two presenters. I really glad that we are now this morning having very good lecture from both of them. So congratulate. I thankful to Prof. Glenn, also Mbak Reti. Yeah, what I memorized from the lecture from Professor Michael Glenn that that is our condition actually. The youth is still lacking in the early warning, early action. We can see, as the professor have shown, that the representation of youth in the process and also the business of early warning and early action is still very limited in our world, especially in the decision making as well as in the activity of early warning activity and also the early action. We maybe had had heard that some years ago there was a survey done by YouGov that the youth is a very still in the a very critical level in their response and also their responsibility to respond to climate change. So youth is still far behind in the issue of climate change and early warning. So that was the first I note from the lecture from Prof. Michael Glenn. And the second, Prof. Glenn mentioned about the history of early warning, early action, that it was initiated by IFRC, that is the Humanitarian Aid Organization. So here, the early action and early warning, how it is meaningful to this society and also to save the people from the disaster is coming from the needs from in the downstream. It is the actors in who work in the humanitarian aid. They really they really think that early warning is key point. Yeah, early warning that can trigger the early action is key point in to save to avoid the people from the disaster. So in the early warning, the forecast is very important. So I note one very good statement in the slide of Professor Glenn. That is, you don't need a forecast if you cannot do early action. So our forecast is actually useless if people cannot do early action. If people cannot read our warning, then actually our forecast, our warning is useless. So I would like to say, as I know that participants, most of them are the student from STMKG. So I would like to share with them that your field in meteorology, in climatology, in geophysics, in the instrumentation of meteorological and climatological and geophysics instruments, it's very very great. And your contribution in forecasting, in making early warning is also very great in human society. And but we have to make sure, that is our challenge. That is our challenge, that we have to make sure that our early warning and also our forecast is useful and also used by society and it's meaningful. That is the thing that I can note from the Professor Michael Glenn. And the second one that I note also is there is a good idiom that is foreseeability is more important than probability. So usually we are as the forecaster. So Ella has mentioned that my background is also forecaster in the past and also researcher. So here we know that foreseeability is more important than probability. Now we are still uh, busy how to make our product in forecasting and also in providing early warning as becoming very good, yeah, becoming very good. And usually, and we are thinking right now that providing probability forecast is very important. Yeah. But then here we learn that foreseeability to the society is more important than that. So we have still homework here. How we communicate effectively our early warning to the society. That in the source we have still a homework how to make our forecast is the best, and in the downstream, so that is in the upstream, and in the downstream we have still a homework how to make our early warning is triggering foreseeability in the society. So here I giving uh, foreseeability to the society here is very keyword in this process. Yeah. And the last thing from Professor Michael Glantz, I note that is actually the definition of also mentioned by Mbak Teti in the anticipatory action is that early warning and early action, that is the anticipatory action or forecast-based action, mean taking steps to protect people before a disaster strike based on early warning or forecast. But we have to make sure that should be effective. Yeah. And also it must involve meaningful engagement with a risk community. So here I make kind of flow. How then we can make communication, we communicate the climate science, the warning, the forecast science into the society, creating understandable early warning dissemination. So our early warning should be disseminated clearly and also understandable by society. And but then it's not only that, but we have to engage with the society to in order to save the people. Then I make a red note here. What we need is collaboration multi-pihak, multi-pihak kerjasama multi-pihak. That is the multi-actors collaboration. Without that, we cannot do alone. Yeah? We can do alone to do these things. That is from Professor Michael Glantz, and this is the note from Ms. Teti. I think you also notice this is the anticipatory action definition that we have to reverse in order to make the process clearly and to become to make our early warning meaningful to the society. And there are three pillars that has been explained by the presenters. That is the early warning, early action, and financing. But I would like to emphasize in two things: that is early warning and early action. as we know that the MKG has already providing early warning in three fields, yeah. The so-called meteorological early warning system, climatological early warning system, and tsunami early warning system. So those three early warning systems are now ready for the public and for the society. But our challenge and also our humble is that we ask ourselves, we make a question, we questioning to ourselves, how good is our forecast and how reliable is our early warning? How effective is our early warning system? Whether it is disseminated actively, effectively, is it useful, meaningful, or helpful? And how to increase the engagement between our early warning with the society. And for early action, we may question ourselves, or maybe we may question to other actors how we would respond society, how we as the early warning actors deal with this. I think those can be starting of our discussion. I will give to Mbak Ella to maybe to give the floor to further discuss what I learned from the very best two lectures in this morning. I think that's all from my side. Thank you very much, Mbak Ella. And again, I wish we have a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Dr. Siswanto, for insightful presentation. Now it's time to question and answer session. Okay. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Dodo Gunawan already raised his hand. So yeah, please, you can speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Ella. Yeah, thank you to the speakers. Professor Glenn, very inspiring talk, and also Ibu Teti, very nice presentations. And I also do congratulations to STMKG for the Dies Natalis by holding this seminar. Yeah, I just maybe some maybe not questions, but just comments or even maybe also yes a question, clarification. Yeah. Now, as mentioned by Professor Glantz, formerly we heard about the WEA, early warning, early actions. But now it should look like to more wide to be by adding for all. But also formerly we heard in the context of disaster, there is jargon. There is no one left behind, and also for all we especially in National Disaster Agency use a pentahelix. My question is, it still not enough with mention like no one left behind, pentahelix for involved in the disaster, and what behind of adding early warning, early action for all? Is it less effective, or what's behind? Also, from Ibu Teti, what's is it not effective to use early action, aksi dini, to be as the anticipatory action? What's the difference Is this less meaningful for the early action, accidini, and then and that's some comments. And between the two, early action and early warning and early action, sometimes there is a gap. Yes. So in the early warning side, like institution like us is providing early warning. It is more maybe is more advanced because we are in the structure side, as Pak Saswanto mentioned. Is this in the structure side? But the early action is the cultural side. So less. That's why there is a gap, and there is no not useful if we just only giving early warning but late action. That's why there is a gap between early warning and early action. So what we should actually to minimize the gap, we of course sometimes provide the information to all for communities for all levels, but there is another agency institutions that should be directly to community, directly touch the community, like you for PMI, Ibu Teti, for example. So this is my some question, comment, and would like to give any clarification for both of you. Thank you, Ella.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dodo. I would go first to Ms. Teti. Are you still with us?
Yes, Ella, I am still here, but I will not be able to show my webcam.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So I can conclude that Mr. Dodo just asked about it seems like pentahelix collaboration or multi-stakeholders partnership is not really effective. So yeah, how effective could you give? How effective this AA that you just present before, and then how to minimize the gap from all the stakeholders, between the stakeholders, if I can conclude. So maybe you can answer first.
For the pentahelix, Pak Dodo, this is our partnership framework, and ideally, if we are able to sort of operationalize this, I think it would. We believe that the more actors there is, then the more resource we have, the more effective we are, and the masses we can do for anticipatory actions. But in reality, this is not something that we have been. This is not yet something that we have achieved, especially for anticipatory action, because based on our experience, getting the government agency engaged was very, very, it was quite difficult at the beginning because we do not have the same understanding of what anticipatory action is. There are a lot of confusion, there are a lot of ambiguity, interpretation on what anticipatory action is. So for us, from the Red Cross side, if we have the same understanding perspective on AAEs, including with the government, the community, then that would be a very huge milestone to tackle. And so far, we have not yet engaged the private sector in this matter. We did collaborate with a consultant, but in a way where we operationalize our early action. This is unfortunately, we can speak a lot on this topic yet. But we, as Pak Siswanto mentioned, anticipatory actions requires multi-stakeholders cooperation, collaboration with the community, the Met Office, the academic, and that's what we have been trying to do. But one thing that we are lacking at the moment, and we we hope in the future we can engage more and more is the private sector. But yeah, what do we do to how effective it is? I cannot say for sure, and whether it will work in the future. But yes, yeah, hopefully, I hope this answer response is sufficient at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's why we start with this webinar to have the same understanding about the anticipatory action, and then afterward we hope that the engagement from all parties, once they knew the terminology and how it is will be affect us in the future, all parties will work together to retrieve an ideal this anticipatory action. So because we as a humanitarian actor, we will work together to save life and to save all living things, just Dr. Suko mentioned before. Well, is there any question? Anyone want to raise hand again? Or okay, I will start. Maybe I have interest with the phrase that Teti said about culture preparedness. For me, early warning system, it should be effective. I always say to myself that an advanced early warning system is pointless when the users and the society can comprehend the idea. Story that Teti mentioned, like it's like tell me you are Indonesia without telling me you are Indonesia, because Indonesian people, most of us, we don't really get the idea of early action before the disaster comes. So when they see flood, they will evacuate. They don't rely on early warning. They rely on what they see. So that's ironic actually. That's why I think the most important is to raising awareness among society, not only among the government, the stakeholders, but also the society. I will go first maybe to Professor Mikey. Maybe you can share with us, do you have any experience related educating a community or building like such insightful to raising this awareness about early warning system, and how this action impact society? Sorry, I think you still mute. You can unmute first.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little slower than most people on the computer. But I generally do research on disasters after. What I've done is I do a lot with early warning systems, but I look for lessons learned, you know, and I've collected a lot of lessons. And I think in social science, a lot of people do not like case studies, okay? But most of our information comes from case studies. I mean, as an intellectual thing in a university, you do case study, but it's not a generalization. You can't make a hypothesis. You know, the intellectual tells you that. But in fact, it's practically valuable because you find out what you did wrong and you can correct what you did wrong. But I also find out that after these disasters, many recommendations are made, but not many are done, because after 3 months, 6 months after the disaster, there is another problem to deal with. There's no money, there's no interest, and people move on. So I've written about lessons learned about disasters. Okay, that many of the same recommendations keep coming up in the US for hurricanes, for example. And there's something not connecting between science and society. okay? It's not just awareness raising, because it's not what you call a one and done. I talked to people, I told them what was right, I left. You have to keep doing it. It's like a gentle rain, soft breeze wears down the enemy, you know, so you have to constantly do that. And I think the best group to do it with are not the old people, I mean, working people, but they're kids. So the where to do it is in school, and where to do it if you want the most fastest response is in high school, because they already are more, you know, it could be middle school too, but high school, they can talk to their parents. Oh no, this is what's going on. I've learned this and why it's important, you know, and all that. So, but that's what I'm thinking. The other thing though, someone said, something I said is that youth are not lacking. I mean, maybe on a wide scale, youth are less involved, but you don't need every youth being involved. So there is this group in Indonesia that you now know, Peta Bencana, where they have a real-time forecast system with youth on cell phones in urban areas. And their model has been in Jakarta, and now they've exported it to Manila and now to Panama in South America. So it's a very successful model to engage youth who have access to cell phones. And they say, oh, in my part of the city, this is happening. And it's real time. It's the gap between long range forecasting, middle range, and the disaster. It's that little gap when what's going on right now, you know? So I think Indonesia has something that many countries don't have. And Pedicom can, you know, so I think that's important.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Yeah, I know about Peta Bencana. Fun fact: Peta Bencana will improve their information by a selfie. So you can just post a selfie on Instagram, because it is the fastest news that we can get, that youth can get, and it is powerful to inform everyone around us. So yeah, I think everyone in this participation in this webinar should take a look at Peta Bencana. Okay, maybe Dr. Siswanto, you want to add something, your experience related to climate literacy among the youth? You can share about the early warnings that you share, early warning awareness. Dr. Siswanto, are you here?
Yeah, sorry. Actually, I'm in a meeting, so with the DG of PMKG, but that's fine. I can now go to outside the room. So yes, so related with a question of how then we also creating or contribute in making the society respond to our early warning. So this is, I think, the clue in to engage between early warning and the society. So then, for example, in BMKG, right now we run some activities in engaging the society with the BMKG information. For example, for the farmers, we have a climate field schools. We train the farmers groups, collaborating with the Ministry of Agriculture. We train them how to read our information, especially in the climate information for agriculture, and how to deal, how to relate the climate information with the agricultural practices that is done by the the so-called penyuluh pertanian, the farmer extension belongs to Ministry of Agriculture, and from this the farmers can learn how to use the DNKG information, how they can avoid for example, such extreme conditions, and they make a kind of anticipation as well as the adaptation, something like that. For the fisheries, we have a school for the weather school for fisheries. For the and now we also run our program of climate literacy for youth and community based. That is how we engage the society, the community based. They can adapt or they can make a kind of any action to follow up the the warning from the BMKG. So now BMKG has been disseminating early warning through many channels. For example, like Android application, iOS application. The people can also, for the detail, they can look at the website. But in the impact-based forecast, right now we provide already, for example, like if the the people given forecast, for example, like given forecast like there will be extreme rainfall above 100 millimeter, what should be they do, what will be impacted or something like that. So that is kind of our first step to create early response society to make early action. I think we still have a lot of homework to do, still need many collaboration, especially in providing, as I mentioned also in my slide, how then we make a kind of impact-based forecast and prediction in any sectors related to our life, the society's life, like in the farm, in the agriculture, in the water resources, in the forestry, and then urban citizens, and then for the small islands, we have still many challenges, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the answer is yeah, we did our best at anticipatory action, early warning system, early warning, early action. So yeah, the next homework is yeah, we still have to improve, even though we try to do all those things. And then of course collaborate, and the Pentaholics collaboration, multi-stakeholders partnership, that's important. I will go to the next question on the chat from Mr. Ahmad, sorry, to Miss Teti. To Miss Teti, what is the biggest obstacle in IFRC? Okay, sorry. Next question from Mr. Ahmad for Ms. Teti. What is the biggest obstacle in IFRC humanitarian activities, and what is IFRC role in responding to the issue of global warming? Can you explain it? Thank you.
Hi, Ella.
Yeah.
This question, I think it deserves another webinar.
Okay.
Because there's no way to explain this the work of IFRC humanitarian mission within a short timeline. But yeah, I'll try to explain as best as I can. The IFRC, I'm not sure if Ahmad is asking how we work worldwide or just specific in Indonesia, but the IFRC, we work, we do our humanitarian activities worldwide, including in Indonesia. And this humanitarian is not only emergency response. We are engaging in different disaster risk cycle. So preparedness work, disaster risk reduction, anticipatory action, emergency response, emergency recovery. So there are a lot of big challenges, and I cannot pinpoint just one. So but based on this, how we work as emergency response is our core funding, core business. I would say there are a lot of disasters happening in Indonesia at the moment, and of course across the world. So funding is one of the main challenges because there's only so much money to distribute to roll out to this disasters mission. We always we rely on government funding. We rely on organization funding. So sometimes there are competing priorities between which disasters need to be funding from. For example, at the moment, internationally there are Ukraine humanitarian crisis, and then Morocco, and then Turkey. So this funding is a big challenge for us. And then one thing that is always a big challenge is coordination and collaboration, especially with various stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's local NGOs, international agencies, UN agencies. They can be very confusing and complex. So we as organization oftentimes work in silos because yes, we do this mission, we have this emergency operation, we need to accomplish it, and that sort of sometimes turn into something else when we lack coordination and with other organizations. So this is always a challenge for us. Of course, there are other challenges as a humanitarian organization, and for the climate change, this is maybe if Ahmad is very interested, they can go to our website, the ifrc.org. But what I can summarize that we play a significant role in the issue of climate change. But most importantly, because disaster response is sort of our core business, as you can see in the slide, IFRC and the associated the national societies such as the Indonesian Red Cross, Timor-Leste Red Cross, we help the community to prepare and to respond to climate-related disaster, such as hurricane, flood, droughts, and which can be oftentimes worsened by the changing climate. And we also work on capacitating our National Red Cross on early warning and such. That is on preparedness. We also conduct resilience programming, climate change adaptation this is usually through long-term programming. So 2 years or more, where inside there are a number of sectoral sectoral interventions such as a livelihood, where we do livelihood diversification, where we strengthen the climate the agriculture of the local community through climate smart agriculture, disaster risk reduction strategies, and so forth. So we also have a lot of intervention closely with health and health especially with the epidemic and pandemic, which can be associated to an extent with the climate change. Community education, awareness, outreach. This is something that we have always been used. I don't know if anyone remembers, but during the pandemic, we have a huge risk communication and community engagement effort. This community education also applies to climate change. Behind the scene, we do advocacy with the government, and we along with other stakeholders. I think that sort of summarizes our efforts in climate change. For more information, I feel like I'm promoting the IFRC. Please do check our website where you can sort of access the resource to what the IFRC and other national societies are doing for climate change. Thank you, Ella. I hope that answers it.
Okay, thank you, Teti. Sorry for the noise. Maybe we can go to the next question that's been answered actually, but if you want to answer directly, I will give the time for you from the question from Mr. Ahmad. Sorry for the noise. To Professor Michael.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I just want to say there are a couple things, but on this, everything is getting more difficult. And but right now, the recent past is the near future is going to be probably foreseeably like the recent past. Okay. So, people wake up and they think today's going to be like yesterday. Tomorrow will likely be like today, generally speaking. Okay. But then something happens and it disrupts that. So they're used to certain things. So my feeling is that in the short term, we can still use history, the near history, for forecasting seasonal and stuff like that. But for the long term, in decade, it's going to be all different. Well, it's going to be pretty different, let me say. So not only is the weather changing, the seasons are changing, El Nino is changing, okay? All the oscillations, of which there are many, the Indian Ocean dipole is changing, okay? All these things are Southern Oscillation Index is changing. So all these things are interacting, and it's a difficult task to sort them out. So that's why for El Nino, we look at one place in the ocean, Nino 3.4, in the middle of the equatorial Pacific. Australia cares about Nino 4, closer to Australia. Peru cares about 1 and 2, closer to Peru. But for global forecasting, they use this middle one. So everything is being changed. The ocean's heating, the atmosphere's heating, they interact. So I don't know, science will have to keep up with the changes, and I'm sure they are monitoring them. But the other point I wanted to make, that one word was not mentioned the entire time, and it's one of my favorite words. We talk about preparedness. To me, preparedness is strategic. You build a seawall to hold back coastal storms. But when the Met Service or the oceanography people say it's going to be a severe coastal storm, coastal intrusion onto the land, that requires getting ready. It's in the shorter term. So to me, readiness is tactical response, and preparedness is strategic. And if you go to the UNDRR dictionary, glossary, it only mentions in the middle of preparedness definition, it has one sentence on readiness. But for most people in the world, readiness is more important than preparedness, because that's an immediate threat. Okay. I don't know if you want something else, but I just want to bring readiness to make people aware of that.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. I love that. Readiness is tactical, preparedness is procedure. Well, is there any other question? I will give one more chance to ask directly. If not, I will just go to the to wrap up this session. So I would ask for a closing statement from three speakers. First, I will go with Professor. The closing statement.
It's been a great experience, actually. Next time I will, if we do it again, if you ever have me back, I will learn how to access my own slides. So I'll be smarter then. I have an awareness that I have a weakness, and I have to rely on a young person to show me how to do it. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
Great experience.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And Teddy too.
Yeah, thank you too for teaching us today. And I will go to Teti. Do you have a closing statement?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Glenn, for your session. I also, as a humanitarian working on AA, learned especially about the role of youth. And thank you for STMKG for inviting us and to. Yeah, I just hope that there are a lot of changing approach. We as humanitarians and of course the Met Office cannot stay the same in a changing climate, and anticipatory action is just one of these approach that we're trying to see if it works out. Maybe in the future there are a lot of more buzzwords coming in with the use of early actions. I don't know, but at the moment, I hope that my simple introduction is sufficient to all of you. And if you have more queries, feel free to get in touch with the Indonesian Red Cross, because they have been doing this a lot. They are actually one of the organizations working very, very closely with the community, and one of the advanced in terms of progress AA in Indonesia. So otherwise, reach out to the Indonesian Red Cross or us. We'll be able to help you with more information. So yeah, I hope that that's it, and we're hoping to see or collaborate with one of you or in the future, because we have been cooperating with the Met Office, the BMKG very, very closely. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Teti. And then last, close sum up our discussion. If you can join us, Dr. Siswanto, please give your last statement. Or, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to beloved speakers, to all participants. We are going to before this session, and I like to just wrap up. Preparedness is procedure. It means we have to taking steps to protect society. The knowledge before disasters is also essential, because basically early warning system, when effective, are meant to be to enable the action of the anticipation of a hazard. So thank you very much for Professor Michael Glantz. Thank you, Teti from IFRC, and thank you, Dr. Siswanto. If I have minutes, I will just promote something about the. If you see that early warning, early action future leaders network, we will share the link. The link for your absence. And then after you submit to the link, we will provide a Google form that you can submit with your interest to the Future Leaders Network. Actually, Future Leaders Network is a platform for us to improve our knowledge in early warning and early action. That's where me, Teti, and Professor Glantz actually met. Teti is a core team in Indonesia. I act as a co-chair, and Professor Glantz is our advisor on that platform. So yeah, please feel free to join us. And yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much for all of your attention. I will give back to Valerina, and good afternoon, good evening for Professor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Graziela Ola, for leading this amazing session today. Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for this webinar. We are grateful for your time and attention given in this webinar. On behalf of our committee, may I apologize for any mistakes that have been made. Once again, thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All right. After you finish filling
Thank you,
the
Prof.
presentation form, all right,
Prof.
you
Miki,
can
thank you.
the attendee may allow to leave the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Terima kasih Mbak Gracia.
Thanks,
Ya,
everyone.
semuanya teman-teman sehat-sehat semuanya. Thank you Profesor. Thank you Pak Siswanto.
Terima kasih
Dan
panitia.
semua panitia, sukses semuanya untuk kita semua. Emerging Leave.
Ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ella. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Professor.
Thank you,
Night.
Professor.
Bye-bye.